It was late October when a group of 4 hikers decided to explore a stretch of wilderness in the Pacific Northwest, a place thick with fog and legends. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of pine, and the silence of the forest felt unnatural, almost staged. Their boots crunched against wet leaves as they moved deeper into the woods, but something about the atmosphere felt wrong, like they were trespassing on ground that wasn't meant for them. As the trail narrowed, one of them noticed deep grooves carved into the bark of a towering cedar tree. The marks weren't just scratches, they were claw marks, and they started 10 feet above the ground. Bears, even the biggest ones, couldn't reach that high. The hikers exchanged nervous glances, trying to laugh it off, but no one could find a joke to make the unease disappear. They pressed on, the silence weighing heavier with every step. Then came the sound. A low, guttural growl rolled through the mist, distant yet close enough to vibrate in their chests. Birds erupted from the trees in frantic bursts, scattering like they were fleeing something far more dangerous than the hikers. One of them whispered, "Cougar," but the tone in his voice carried doubt. Whatever made that sound was bigger, much bigger. They stopped dead in their tracks when 2 faint lights flickered through the fog, about 20 yards ahead. At first, they thought it was a reflection, maybe the beam of another hiker's flashlight, but the lights moved, blinked, and then narrowed into a cold, steady stare. Eyes. Glowing, amber eyes fixed directly on them, unblinking, unshaken. The forest seemed to hold its breath. No wind, no rustle, no sound but their pounding hearts. And then, in the shifting mist, they saw it, a shadow, impossibly tall, moving just enough to remind them that this wasn't a trick of the fog. Something was there. Something watching. Something that didn't belong to this world. When the hikers finally made it out of the woods, they were shaken but desperate to tell someone. They went straight to the nearest ranger station, voices overlapping as they described the claw marks, the growl, the glowing eyes. The ranger on duty listened, stone-faced, jotting down notes on a clipboard without once looking surprised. It was as if he had heard it all before. He told them to stay put, while he made a call. Minutes later, 2 men in dark uniforms arrived, not park rangers, not police, no insignias, no names, just cold stares. The strangers asked for their phones, claiming it was for evidence. The hikers hesitated, but the men were firm, insisting it was protocol. One of the hikers, nervous but defiant, asked when they would get their phones back. The taller man's reply was unsettlingly vague. "When we're done." No paperwork, no explanation. Just like that, their only proof, photos of the claw marks, a shaky video of those glowing eyes, was gone. Hours later, they were escorted out of the station with nothing but a warning. "You didn't see what you think you saw. Don't go back there." The tone wasn't friendly advice, it was a command. When one of the hikers pressed for answers, the shorter man leaned in close and whispered, "Some things aren't meant to be found." Then he locked the door behind them. Word spread quickly among locals. Some said the government had known about strange sightings in those woods for decades but always shut them down. Others claimed entire families had gone missing near that same stretch of forest, their cases written off as accidents or runaways. The hikers tried to contact the media, but no one took them seriously. A few journalists showed mild interest, but once the names of those government men were mentioned, the calls went silent. Stories killed before they even started. At night, the hikers began to notice black SUVs parked across from their homes, engines off, silhouettes just sitting inside. No one approached, no words exchanged, but the message was clear: stop talking. Every attempt to speak out was met with silence, intimidation, and fear. And somewhere in the back of their minds, a darker thought grew. Maybe the men weren't trying to protect the public from panic. Maybe they were trying to hide something the public was never supposed to know. The discovery came by accident. An urban explorer named Daniel had been documenting abandoned buildings in Washington state when he stumbled across an old ranger station deep in the forest. The structure was crumbling, windows boarded, moss swallowing the roof. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and old paper, like a place time had forgotten. In one corner of the office, half buried beneath fallen ceiling tiles and mouse-chewed boxes, he found a dusty cardboard container marked "Property of U.S. Forestry Service." Inside was a stack of VHS tapes, most unmarked except for one. On the spine, written faded marker, were the words "Incident File 1992. Daniel didn't think much of it until later that night, when he played the tape on a second-hand VCR. At first, the footage was routine, grainy shots of rangers in uniform, their flashlights sweeping across the woods. The camera shook as though the man holding it was nervous. The voices were hushed, almost whispered, as if they were tracking something. Then, the beam of a flashlight caught movement. a towering silhouette slipping between the trees, moving far faster than anything that size should have been able to move. The camera zoomed in just for a moment, and though the image was blurred, the outline was unmistakable. The creature was enormous, easily twice the height of a man, its arms dragging unnaturally long, its head snapping toward the light with eerie speed. The rangers shouted, one of them cursing, another demanding the cameraman to shut it off. But the tape didn't cut. Instead, it caught something worse, the sound. A guttural roar so deep the speakers rattled, followed by frantic screaming as the flashlight beams scattered in all directions. The footage turned chaotic. The cameraman was running, heavy breathing and snapping branches filling the audio. Every few seconds, the camera caught flashes of movement. A massive shadow gliding effortlessly between the trees, always behind them, always closing in. And then, over the pounding of boots, came a single, chilling line, shouted by one of the rangers. "It's not supposed to be here!" The screen jolted violently, as though the cameraman had fallen, and then the tape cut to static. Daniel sat frozen, staring at the snow-filled screen long after the tape ended. His first thought was to upload it, to expose what he had found. But when he tried, the file corrupted every time he attempted to transfer it. Friends he showed the tape to swore it was real. But within days, strangers started showing up near Daniel's apartment, watching, waiting. Soon after, the tape itself disappeared from his locked desk drawer, as if it had never been there at all. All that remained was the memory of what he saw, and the ranger's desperate voice echoing in his head. It started with whispers among the fishermen along the Maine coast. Nets that had been cast into calm waters were being hauled back shredded to ribbons, as if something massive had torn through them with deliberate force. At first, they blamed sharks, maybe even orcas, but no one could explain the precision of the tears. These weren't random bites. They looked like something had sliced through with claws or blades. The losses became so frequent that some crews refused to sail after dark. One night, a veteran captain named Harris decided to find answers for himself. With a small crew, he set out under a moonless sky, their boat rocking on a strangely quiet sea. The men joked nervously, but the tension was thick enough to cut. Around midnight, the sonar screen lit up with something unusual, a shape far larger than any whale, moving beneath the boat in total silence. Harris squinted at the monitor, muttering, "That's not right." The shape vanished, then reappeared, closer. Suddenly, the boat lurched. The men staggered as the hull groaned, metal grinding against something unseen. Floodlights snapped on, revealing nothing but black waves. Yet in the water below, shadows shifted, long and serpentine, circling like predators sizing up prey. The crew leaned over the edge, trying to glimpse it, when a massive swell slammed against the boat, nearly throwing them overboard. One man swore he saw an eye, enormous, glimmering, staring back at him from just below the surface. Panic set in. They tried to haul the nets, but halfway up, they snagged, jerked violently from below as if something was pulling against them. The winch screeched, cables snapping, until the nets tore free and plunged back into the water. What floated up instead was worse, a tangle of shredded rope, twisted metal, and something slick and black clinging to the fibers, skin, scales. No one wanted to touch it. Harris barked for them to cut the lines and get out, his face pale under the floodlights. The sonar flickered again, this time showing not one but three massive shapes moving in formation beneath them, tracking the boat as it sped back toward shore. They never surfaced, never revealed themselves, but the pressure waves beneath the hull made the men feel as if they were being escorted, or hunted. By the time they reached land, the strange catch had already dissolved into a foul-smelling sludge. Harris told no one what he'd seen that night, but his crew swore off the ocean for good. Something out there was watching, waiting, and it wasn't a whale. The Nevada desert is a place where silence itself feels alive. During the day, it bakes under the sun, but at night, the land transforms into something else entirely, an endless, hollow expanse where sound carries too far and shadows move when they shouldn't. A team of geologists had been sent out to survey an area dotted with abandoned mines, relics of the gold rush. They camped near one of the canyons, their tents glowing faintly under the pale wash of moonlight. By midnight the wind had died, leaving only stillness. That's when the first strange sound echoed through the canyon, like fingernails scratching against stone. At first, they thought it was just rocks shifting in the cold night air. But when they aimed their flashlights along the canyon walls, they froze. Figures clung to the vertical rock face, pale, humanoid shapes, crawling on all fours like insects. Their limbs were elongated, bending in ways bones weren't supposed to bend. Each movement was jerky, mechanical, but disturbingly fast. The creatures didn't climb upward or downward. They seemed to move sideways, scuttling along the wall as if gravity didn't apply to them at all. The geologists whispered among themselves, trying not to draw attention, but curiosity was stronger than fear. One of them switched on a high-powered lamp and directed the beam toward the wall. The figures froze instantly. Their heads, or what resembled heads, snapped toward the light in perfect unison. For a moment, the canyon felt like a stage, and the team like an audience that had made a mistake. The silence broke when one of the creatures emitted a low, rattling hiss that seemed to vibrate inside the bones of anyone who heard it. The team scrambled back to camp, but something followed. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the sand, matching the movement of something unseen. Rocks tumbled down from the canyon wall as if something heavy was crawling above them, just out of sight. One of the geologists shouted, insisting they pack up and leave immediately. But before they could, a scream split the night. 2 tents collapsed as their occupants were dragged toward the canyon edge. Flashlights darted wildly, catching glimpses of pale arms, claw-like fingers, and faces that weren't faces at all, just smooth, blank skin where features should have been. By dawn, only 3 of the geologists remained. They found 2 helmets in the sand near the canyon rim, cracked open as though crushed by immense pressure. No footprints led away from the site. No blood, no drag marks, just the silence of the desert, heavier than before. The survivors refused to speak of what they saw, but locals whispered that the mines were never abandoned because of empty veins of gold. They were sealed shut, bricked over and forgotten, to keep something else from crawling back out. The leaked files surfaced in the most unlikely way, on an encrypted forum hidden deep within the internet. At first, no one paid attention. They looked like ordinary government documents, black and white scans stamped with red CLSSFED labels. But buried inside the pages were accounts, field reports, describing encounters with entities that didn't fit into any known category of science. The reports stretched back decades, from the 1950s to the early 2000s, spanning forests, oceans, deserts, and even suburbs. Each case was stamped with a chilling phrase, Project Entity 7. One of the earliest files described a small town in Montana, where residents reported strange children appearing on porches at night. Their eyes were too large, their voices too flat, repeating the same phrases over and over. Within weeks, half the town had mysteriously relocated, their houses boarded up overnight. No explanation was ever given. The file ended with a single note, population redistributed, case closed. But no record existed of where those families went, or if they even survived. Another report detailed a naval vessel in the 1970s that encountered a massive, luminescent shape beneath the surface of the Pacific. The sonar logs included with the file showed readings far larger than any known submarine or whale, moving at speeds no machine could match. The ship's captain filed a frantic transmission before contact was abruptly lost. The vessel was found adrift days later, every crew member missing. Their personal effects remained untouched, meals half-eaten, cigarettes still burning in ashtrays. The only note scrawled in the logbook was, "Entity not of this world." The deeper the files went, the stranger they became. There were sketches, crude but haunting, drawn by witnesses under interrogation. Long limbed figures with distorted faces, shapes with too many joints, shadows that didn't align with their surroundings. In one folder, a psychiatrist's notes described survivors of encounters who developed identical nightmares, standing in front of a towering figure that whispered in a language no one understood. Some survivors went insane within weeks. Others vanished entirely. The final file was the most unsettling. It wasn't a report, but an internal memo addressed to unnamed officials. The document warned that sightings had been increasing worldwide, that containment was becoming impossible. It ended with a single line, underlined 3 times in bold black ink. "The world isn't ready to know." And beneath it, a handwritten scrawl barely legible through the scan. "But they're coming anyway." It happened in Oregon. Quiet, unassuming, the kind of small town where nothing ever makes headlines. One night, a teenager decided to livestream his walk home after a late shift. His phone camera swayed as he joked with his friends online, his breath visible in the cold air. For 10 minutes, nothing unusual happened. Then, the chat exploded. Viewers began typing frantically. "What's behind you? Look at the sky." The boy turned, and the frame caught something impossible, a shadow stretching across rooftops, so massive it dwarfed the town itself. The livestream grew chaotic. The boy's breathing quickened, the camera shaking as he sprinted down the empty street. Overhead, the shadow moved again, broad, deliberate, and far too fast for something of its size. Streetlights flickered, one by one, as if the power grid was collapsing under its presence. Viewers spammed the comments, some begging him to keep recording, others demanding he run. Then, for just a second, the lens caught detail, a shape, impossibly tall, with limbs that bent at angles that hurt to look at. Before anyone could process what they'd seen, the stream glitched. The video pixelated, colors bleeding into static, though the audio carried through. A deep, resonant hum rattled the speakers like an engine powering up, or a voice too low to be human. The boy screamed for help, his footsteps echoing, and then another sound cut in. A sharp, metallic screech that sent viewers ripping off their headphones. Just as suddenly, silence. The screen froze on a single frame, a blur of darkness swallowing the edge of town. The stream ended there, but thousands had witnessed it live. Within hours, clips circulated online, re-uploaded again and again. But by morning, every video link returned the same message: content not available. Accounts that posted the footage were deleted, entire pages wiped clean as if they never existed. Still, those who had seen it swore the shadow was real. And those in the boy's town confirmed one more unsettling fact: he never came home that night. His family filed a missing persons report. No trace was ever found. Officials called it a hoax. News outlets echoed the line, repeating the words until the story was buried under new headlines. But residents whispered about the night the sky itself moved, about the hum that rattled their windows, about the boy who never came back, and more than anything, they whispered about the final message that appeared on his livestream chat before it cut out, typed by a user no one recognized. This is only the beginning. So the question remains: if hikers, fishermen, scientists, and even hidden government files all point to the same truth, then what exactly are we dealing with? These aren't myths, they aren't campfire stories. They're warnings, scattered across decades, buried under silence, and erased whenever they surface. And yet, despite every effort to keep them hidden, the sightings keep growing. Shadows in the woods, figures on canyon walls, shapes beneath the ocean. Something is out there, and each encounter feels less like an accident and more like a pattern. Maybe the world wasn't ready to see them. Maybe we still aren't. But if these creatures have been watching us all along, then the real question isn't what they are. It's when they'll finally step out of the shadows. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.